Welcome to Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you very much for choosing to join into this week's episode. Now in this week's episode, we've got my lovely client Lynn in, who is an absolute darling. I hope you enjoy watching this haircut and you take away some fantastic tips and tricks with you. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends. Every time you share it with your friend is like giving the channel a little extra boost. It's a great way of supporting the channel. If you're brand new here, subscribe for new content like this each and every single week. And this video is sponsored by the Life of Hair Digital Academy. The whole channel is now sponsored by the Life of Hair Digital Academy. Thank you to those of you who have joined, who have supported the journey of creating this education platform for you to prosper. Over on the Life of Hair Digital Academy, there is lots and lots of exclusive content for you to peruse. Not only do we talk about technique and how to implement technique, but we also dive into how to make sure that your services are profitable so you are maximizing your efforts with the minimum amount of energy. I know there are a lot of you out there who unfortunately maybe haven't taken a closer look at your financial situation and maybe doing some of your services at a loss. I've experienced this when working with other people in our industry, and it is a revelation when they decide to do something about it. So please go and have a look over there and let me know if you've got any questions down in the comments. So we're going to start this technique by taking a center profile section straight down the center back. Now, in a lot of my other videos, you will have noted that I would start my short techniques in the front around the ear area and travel into the nape area, depending on the shape I'm building up. Not very often do I build up a square, flat shape onto someone's head. But in this particular instance, and for this particular style, a square shape is what's needed, and then I will start in the back. I always tend to build up a bit of shape towards the top of the parietal ridge in the occipital bone because I feel it's more flattering on most head shapes. However, in this particular instance, as you'll see right at the end, this needs a flat, square shape to allow the top to sit neatly over the underneath. We're going to continue with vertical sections that are on a slight diagonal forward, and you'll see that this will progress as we travel towards the front. It is also really important to remember that your sections need to remain clean and concise so you can see exactly where you're traveling. My tension on each section is pretty much exactly the same. I don't grip the hair very hard in between my fingers, but I have it firmly enough that it's going to stay exactly where I've pulled it out from the head shape. You'll see that this section now is just ever so slightly diagonally forwards than the previous section. I do this in some instances because I feel like it helps me to travel towards the front hairline and keep a fluid motion rather than fighting the head shape, which is round. With a vertical line, it gives my wrist a slightly better position to be in, and it means that I'm in a slightly more comfortable place as I travel through the head shape. Now, as you can see here, there is a gentle bit of weight building up towards the top of the section, but it really is pretty much a square shape. We're going to travel with the same finger angle, and the amount of hair that we're removing is pretty much exactly the same all the way through the section, from the top of the section right through to the outer hairline. As we travel through these sections, what we need to make sure is we can clearly see our previous section that we've just cut. Our guides are so important when we are doing haircuts like this, because when we come back to cross-check, if it looks like a bumpy road, then we've created numerous finger marks. And finger marks aren't the end of the world specifically, but obviously not ideal when we're trying to create something that is short and precise. The level of expertise, I believe, goes up when we're doing shorter hair techniques because of the disposition to be able to see any mistakes on the hair. So when we're working through our technique, we want to make sure the hair is being pulled straight out from the head shape. In this particular instance, this is going to give us a nice clean cutting line that we can follow through without creating finger marks. Now, finger marks are generally where the sections that are taken become very wide and all the hair is then gathered into the center and cut, and it creates like a ridge. And if you can continue to do that throughout the haircut, you can accidentally build up or lose weight. And what I mean by that is the hair can get shorter or longer by accident. You sometimes will probably remember back to maybe your training days or if you're in your training days, and you'll suddenly get to the front and you'll be cutting off a lot more hair and you'll wonder why that happened. And generally speaking, what's happening is the sections that you're taking are too wide, and that hair is all being gathered into the center, and that is creating over direction in one direction, either forward or backwards, depending which way you're traveling, and then that is going to end up causing you pain in the long run. Things that you have to obviously go back and correct. The quicker and easier you can get what I like to call the sketching, this wet shape, the easier the whole hair cutting experience will be. I like to think of cutting short hair, or any hair for that matter, a bit like an artist would draw a picture. They would create some simple shapes in the beginning to outline the character that they're going to draw, and then they would go back in and refine and shade those shapes to create the overall character. I feel like haircutting is pretty much exactly the same thing. Once we've travelled all the way through to the front hairline on that left-hand side, we then go back to the centre back, taking a clear guide and a clean section with a slightly diagonal forward. This time I've gone upside down with my fingers. They're pointing towards the floor, but I've remembered the finger angle that I took previously because of my section from the centre back. When we take that first centre back section, it is incredibly important that that section is bang on. It is the foundation of the entire haircut. So very simply, we carry out this exact same technique all the way through to the front hairline. Now you'll see I'm just cross-checking here. I won't show you the entire cross-check, but there's very little to take off because my sections were no more than about 1 centimetre in width. And in fact, in some cases, the sections were a little narrower than 1 centimetre. But I try and keep them around the same size. Just detailing, refining those sideburn areas there, just making sure they sit nice and slim against my client's head shape. So what we're going to do now is going to carve around the ears, and I think for me, you know, creating shapes onto clients' heads is all a very personal experience. What one person wants, another person doesn't. Example, in this particular instance, Lynn's hair grows out very quickly around her ears. She gets frustrated with that. So what we do is we just cut around the ears here, and we just gently taper with a light scissor over comb at the end. I'll show you that in the refining stage. For me, though, I think that this is when you start to get into this area of a haircut. This is where the kind of real fun of a short haircut is. You know, you can really tailor it to suit your client's head and needs of their haircut. Remember, because it's a dual thing. Yes, it is about suitability, but it's also about practicality. People aren't going to repeatedly come back for a haircut that is impractical. If it doesn't work for their lifestyle, if it doesn't work for the way they style their hair, if it doesn't work for them on a day-to-day basis, they will deem it to be not a very good haircut, even if it was the most technically sound haircut you'd ever done, or even ever created. So we're into the centre back now. We've trapped the hair with the comb, and we're just point cutting the outline. 1, to reduce some of the length that we left, but 2, to create a soft perimeter here in the back. We don't want to create what I like to describe as Lego hair in the back there, where we cut square, harsh lines. It doesn't matter so much around the ears because it's hidden by the ear, and you can just gently soften that area. We've now dropped down the top section, and we're working through this crown area. We split the head from just between the highest point of the head and the crown, and we're cutting a slightly curved line, disconnecting this top section from our perimeter. We're then going to create over direction into the center and continue the same line around the head shape, cutting a continuous curve. It's always good to stand on the left-hand side if you're a right-hander, or on the opposite side if you're a left-hander, and cutting up when creating a shape like this is very, very easy to do. It's more difficult to cut down the head, I find. Now, not everybody will agree with that, but just my personal take on things. We're going to then take a subsequent section that runs across the head horizontally, that is just in front of the high point of the head. And then we're going to take a vertical section straight down the head and cut a square line that is ever so fractionally longer towards the face. We can always take hair off, we can't leave it on. So for me, it's about deciding what is important for the overall technique and the way that the client's hair is going to be worn. You can see it's a very, very subtle build-up of length towards the face. You'll see why that's important when we get to the end of this haircut. We then subsequently go through and follow our guideline as we travel and over direct each section back to the previous section. So we cut section 1 straight out from the head shape, section 2 is pulled onto section 1, and section 3 is pulled onto section 2. You might see it a little bit more clearly from this angle, but this slight over direction just helps a little bit of a build up of a squarer shape as the head shape curves away from your section. This is obviously at the apex of the head, and the curvature of the parietal ridge is quite extreme at this point, and therefore we can cut a more rounded shape quite easily if we're following the head shape through. So what we want to do is build a bit of an anti-head shape here, and then we're going to take the front section and over direct it back to that square line that we created, just to create a little bit more extended length through the front. And again, that's going to become apparent as to why that's important as we go through this technique. We're now on to the blow dry phase of this technique, and it is a very, very simple blow dry indeed, especially from the client's perspective. I'm going to blow dry my lovely client Lynn doing her hair. She will be able to just either leave it to dry naturally with a little bit of product in it, or just rough dry it like I am here. So that's it. We are all dried and we're going to go into our refining. Now, the top will remain disconnected. We will not be connecting the top and the bottom. But what we will do is take similar sections to the ones we took to cut the hair to make sure that we can get the hair to sit succinctly onto our client's head shape. It's very important to remember that each phase of the technique creates something that is personal to that individual, even if it's the same haircut repeated over and over again on several different people. You, in your refining phase, ultimately create that bespoke haircut. And I feel like that's where the way that I have learnt to cut hair over the years comes into play quite nicely, because what you end up with is a series of techniques that are incredibly repeatable and you can do easily without running behind, because they become very, very second nature. What you can then do is take your personalizing and refining phase and make those haircuts really, really sing for that individual. And that is what I think, for me, is a very, very important part of you standing out in the crowd. We're going to refine around those edges, like I mentioned previously. Light scissor over comb to taper the hair down towards the edges, especially around the ears and into the nape area, ensures that when the hair grows out, that it doesn't start to grow over the ears very, very quickly. This is just ever so gentle refining, just to bring in that shape just a little bit. Don't go overboard, because it will go very, very short and it will look very harsh. Finishing this technique with a little bit of styling pomade. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to take an after picture because we had a few problems with my payment machine at the end of this appointment. But anyway, you will get to see a good look of the overall finished style. It is a lovely, lovely style, and Lynn absolutely rocks this style. I love Lynn to bits. You know, she really has got some very funky hair going on indeed. And Lynn wears her hair like this most of the time. Sometimes she wears it slightly down and across, which you can do with this style because there's quite a lot of length at the front there. So if she wants to wear it down and across, that's also achievable. But generally, swept back is how Lynn goes about wearing her hair. And if you're new here, like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for new videos every single week.